Hi again. I didn't think I would be creating a little video clip again so soon, but I made an appointment for this coming Monday and noticed it was September 11th. And, you know, mostly the whole world knows about 9/11 and what happened in the United States on 9/11 in 2001. And I started reflecting on what happened for me. Um, so I wanted to share that story with you if you feel like listening to it. Do you? um, I met human design. Wow, it was 1993, I think. Yes. Yeah, it was 1993. And before that, I had left the ranch, which was the community in Oregon of Oshos. I had left the ranch, and Michael and I moved to Switzerland, and we had a an American friend in Switzerland who we would get together with once in a while, and there was also a Swiss man that my husband knew from the commune in Zurich. And we met with him sometimes. And I had this feeling that they would really like each other. So um, I invited them both to come for brunch one day. And so they met and they did. They really connected and they got together and then they moved to America together. Lo and behold, I had no idea that the man was um, the person that Rob was told by someone else to get in touch with in America to bring human design to America. I don't know if you follow all that. Um, the voice had said that he needed to bring human design within 7 years, and it was getting um, close to that time. So uh, he ended up contacting this man who was a projector. And my friend was also a projector. So it was two projectors. He ended up contacting this person. And that's how human design came to America. And I remember telling Ra this story, and he said, "You had to introduce them, otherwise, human design, you wouldn't have met human design, you know?" So I thought that was very interesting. Anyway, my friend contacted me when I also had moved to America with Michael. We were living in Florida, and she contacted me and asked me for my birth information. So I sent her my birth information. And then about a week later, I received in the mail my chart and Michael's chart, and then this small little pamphlet, black and white pamphlet with this picture of a man on the cover, with this kind of hat, not a baseball cap like Rob was wearing later, but just kind of a, I don't know what you call them, but a certain kind of a hat, Afghani hat or something like that. And inside was all about protons and neutrons. And I mean, I was like, what the fuck? I was like, this is crazy. This is so mental. Oh my God, you know? And it was just so like, I mean, I couldn't even follow what I was reading. But these charts, they intrigued me. And this was in 1993, I think. And I kept looking at them and I was like, why is that colored on his chart and not on mine? And, you know, it was like very different than any astrological chart I'd ever seen. So I put them away and we ended up moving to Sedona. And then my friend contacted me when we moved to Sedona, and she said she was going to do an introductory lecture about human design in the library in Sedona. And could she stay with us? I said, sure, So she stayed with us. And in those days, there was only the white book and the black book. And I was fascinated. I mean, I really was fascinated. And I remember this one flyer that she had that had a bit of an explanation about human design, but it was like no blame, no shame, no guilt, love yourself was at the header. And I was like, wow, this is amazing, because so much of my sannyas life was really about accepting yourself and loving yourself. And even though I got caught up in all of this turmoil because I didn't know how to say no, even when inside everything was screaming no, um, I won't go into that story now. But anyway, that was what I always felt from my time with Osho. And so she did a reading of my chart, and it was all channels and gates and lines back in those days. And um, it made sense mentally to my mind. I could see, oh, wow, yes, I've seen that. And in those days, there was no profile, no incarnation cross. And of course, none of the other deeper stuff of variables and, color and tone. And there was none of that. It was very much the chart, but there was no type and no strategy and no inner authority or decision making process. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I was really excited about the human design system. I was telling everyone about it, because I felt like, wow, here's a system to help you accept yourself, because here's a chart that's saying this is what you have. This is how you're wired, you know. Um, so for the mind, that uh, can be a relief to see the chart and to understand that. Um, anyway, I for years after that, she would come and visit and do something in Sedona, and I was always like, one of these days, I really want to meet this man, this Ra Uru Hu, because I was like, wow, this is incredible information. But I never wanted to learn human design. So then it was 1997, and this woman said, she's coming to Sedona. Could she stay with me? And I went, yeah, sure. She's been staying with me often. And this time she was coming with Ra, and he was staying somewhere else. So that's when I met Ra. And, I met Ra, the man, before I met Ra, the person who brings human design, because part of, you know, being with Ra, or, running human design in America for Ra, was that you fed him. So I had a car, and neither of them had a car. So we would go and pick him up, and then we go to a restaurant and eat. So it was just hanging out and telling stories. And the one thing that really struck me back then was, wow, this guy is really different. And it wasn't, I didn't know he was a manifester because there was no type then. And it wasn't because he was a manifester, it was his frequency was really different. And I just loved being with him. I just loved hearing his stories and just the talking. And anyway, to make a long story short, um, he did an intro evening, and I went to that, and that's when he brought up type, and he talked about type a little bit. And oh, I was like, whoa, what is this? So I wanted a reading from him. So I got a reading, And many of you have read my book, you know my story. But for those of you who haven't, in my reading, every part of my chart that had been told to me already when the woman had done a reading for me, he referenced back to waiting to respond because I'm a generator with sacral authority. So he would say, this channel only comes into play when you've responded to something being asked of you. Every single aspect of my chart, he brought back to that. I mean, it was like hitting it home, hitting it home. And then the one thing he said that pretty much shocked me, he had told me about my sounds and that, that I make sounds and my sounds are my answer and they're my truth. And I have no idea what my truth is until I hear my sounds about anything. And then he said, I can't trust a word that comes out of your mouth. I can only trust your sounds. And I was in shock. I was like, whoa, because I um, really felt that I spoke my truth, I mean, when I shared something, I was sharing from my truth. And to hear that was like, oh my God. So I just stopped talking. I mean, I just stopped talking. I didn't want to say anything. I don't know, it was just like I just wanted to wait to hear if someone asked me something, what sound I made. And it was that visit to Sedona when he did the first actual course, a weekend course in a hotel about the four types. And I was still having dinners with him and everything, but I had gotten much quieter. I hardly said anything. It was very different than how I was before I had my reading. And he said, are you going to come to the workshop? I went, uh-huh. Not the workshop. He didn't call them workshops. Are you coming to the class? I went, mm-hmm. I was like, oh, okay. Because I never wanted to learn human design. I mean, I didn't want to learn it. I was looking for something that would bring me what I was yearning for. I wasn't interested in learning anything. I wanted to find what I was searching for my whole life. So I go to this class and I wish I had a printout of what he put on the board. And I know it's there in all his work, but it was so succinct. I mean, he had each of the four types and then a couple of lines under each one. And then it was break. And then everyone went up to him. And there were no other manifestors in the class. And I'm like, uh, weren't you in the class? He's supposed to initiate. We're not supposed to initiate with him, and it was like very, very strange for me. But I also understood later, people were so used to doing classes with Ra, which was all about gates and lines and channels. And so everyone was taking notes about what he was teaching. This was my very first class. And it was like I was imbibing it, it was going into me. Every word he said, it was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And when I saw what he had written, it was a slide, a projected slide. It was like, this is the recipe for harmony. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of story. Most of it's in my book. But anyway, I he kept asking me at the end of every class or the end of every course, Mary, and I was Patipada back then. So he would say, Patipada, are you going to come to the course next week or next month? Before I left the classroom, and I always went, uh-huh. I was like, oh, damn, you know, I didn't want to learn human design, but there I am, 15 years going, And of course, then, in the later years, it was more online, but, most of it was live, sitting in a classroom with him, which was very intense. I mean, an ego manifester, splenic too, so very fast. And I would just sit there most of the time with my eyes closed because, again, I wasn't there to learn it. I'll just let it all come in. I let the frequency come in. I let him come in. I just let it all come in. Um, Sometimes it became too much for my body. So I would have a shawl, I'd put the shawl on the ground and I'd lay on the ground with my eyes closed. It was just like all coming in. And people with their laptops and kind of looking over, like, who is this weird? I can only imagine. I ended up taking all these courses and classes. I did everything if I wanted to be an analyst and all of this stuff, but I kept going, to being an analyst. And then 9/11 happened. I was living in Sedona. Um, Ra had left Sedona. He had lived there for 2 years with his family, and that was wonderful. It was just an incredible time of, yeah, just really very cool with the kids, with his wife, and with him. But he had left Sedona, and I had still been going to becoming an analyst. Well, not becoming, but being listed because I had done everything. I had taken all the courses and it, but I kept going, I don't want to be listed. I just want to live me. I want to do my experiment. That's what I'm here for. I've been searching my whole life, and da 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 da. And then with 9/11, that really, aside from the tragedy that happened and all the people who died, that was a shock that I think affected everyone around the world, but especially Americans, because it was the first time anything happened in our generations and maybe the last generations on the USA ground. And I was like, wow, and people's trust. I could see how it shattered, I mean, reading the articles, watching TV and interviews, people were in shock, and it was like, they didn't know what to do. And what came for me was so strong, was, what I had gotten for myself from my own experiment, from living life, waiting to respond, really waiting for life to come to me, and then responding with my inner authority, which is sacral sounds, was I trusted something inside myself, inside me. I didn't have to trust out here, and the last days while I was letting this all kind of move inside of me, because I knew I wanted to share this and talk about this, was I looked to trust. I'm saying, children were born, and in almost all cases, we trust our parents because that's who takes care of us. And as we get older, it's like, who do we trust? The teacher, the expert, the husband or the wife, the doctor, the lawyer, the priest, the minister, the rabbi, all these outer authorities, who do we trust? And I know for myself, I didn't know it at the time, but I was part of my journey was looking for someone outside of me I could trust. It became the man in my life or the experts, the doctor or whoever. And then more in the spiritual searching, it became, Osho. And then I met human design, and it was all about there is no outer authority. There is no one you can trust out there. You can only trust yourself. And that's what human design gave me, to trust myself. I never had that. I never had that. And it's not trusting the mind, because human design is not about that at all. So it's not about believing and trusting what we say to ourselves. It's deeper, it's cellular trust. It's so powerful, And for me, Ra and I were emailing each other that morning. Well, I guess it was the evening in Europe where he was living then. And I was like saying, wow, this is, you know, people need to know that there's something inside they can trust. That became so important for me, that they need to know this. Because out here, we don't know what's going to happen. So then he asked me, so now are you ready to be listed as an analyst? And I went, because it was so important for me to be available to bring that to whoever wanted it, because it felt like something really broke in the United States at that time. And it's still all I really do in human design, if I do anything. Yes, once in a while I'll do something like, the centers of fear, or, something like that. But it's really for me about there's nothing we can trust outside, and how to really get in touch with our own bodies, so that in our form, through our strategy, through our decision-making process or inner authority, how to get to that place where the trust is inside the body, not a belief of the mind, not a trusting. There's no trust in the beginning of this experience. Shit, I didn't trust it at all. I was like, oh God, this is a weird thing. Okay, I've been searching a long time. I'll try it, But this is very different. It's really something that takes time, and there's no trust in the beginning. You really don't know. It feels like your whole life's falling apart, because in a sense it is, but it's not your life. It's the not self life. We haven't really had a chance to live our lives. So there's this whole process of trusting oneself is how we can really be stable no matter what's happening in the world, and how important that is. I mean, even if you don't read the news, you can see how crazy it is out there, how short-circuited people's fuses are, how they're ready to explode at any second, and frustrated and angry and bitter. And, I mean, it's just quite something to watch the unraveling happen. So anyway, that was how I got involved with being available in human design, because I never wanted to learn it. I just kept responding. I was amazed at how much I did learn, actually. But for me, the biggest thing has always been the simple because that's what transformed me. That's what really brought about this transformation where the trust inside of me is so amazing because I never expected to have something like that. To be able to just sit in myself, to be in myself, to just be. Doesn't matter what anyone thinks of me, whether they like me or love me, hate me. It doesn't matter. I like me. I love me. I like to be with me. And it's been an amazing journey. Yeah. 30 years now since I met human design. Not, I can't say it's been that long since I've been in my experiment because it only started when I started living according to my strategy. But it's like there's no time. I mean, time is something that, the mind needs in a sense to be here on planet Earth. We have a doctor's appointment. I have this, and, we have to be somewhere. We have a plane to catch. We have to be at work. So we need time. We need days of the week. We need time. But in reality, it's just, I look out the window and it's just now. Okay, with that, I think I'm going to say goodbye because that tickles me so much. All right. Bye bye. Take care, huh?